We might divorce live on this cast. Today, we're going to talk about a hot topic: why droves of people are leaving the UK and going to more tax efficient locations.
It just feels like at the moment it's just a slog. The world is more free now to move, but I think the government are not really appreciating that element. When you see stats like 12,000 millionaires left last year.
The UK is not the country it used to be. I'm worried that we're a bit of a laughingstock globally because of the mess that we're all in, and it's going to take decades to sort it out.
Do you want to grind it out for the next few years and hope things change, or go somewhere where entrepreneurship is actively encouraged? The narrative about landlords and investors will change because there'll suddenly be, we have a problem. We don't have enough private rental sector houses. So for new investors coming in, I really do think opportunity.
Welcome to this Property Life podcast, brought to you by Property Wealth Club. I'm Caroline Clayton, and I'm joined by my husband, Nick Clayton. And today we're going to talk about a hot topic, one that we have been discussing as investors and as a family, and that is why droves of people are leaving the UK and going to more tax efficient locations.
Sunnier
And
location.
sunnier, yeah, that's a big one for Nick. And what the pros and cons are for leaving the UK. Now, this is by no means us recommending that you leave, but I think the current government and Rachel Reeves have backed a lot of people into a corner that's forced their hand. Now, Nick, you can keep me right on the stats on how many people left the UK just last year. There's been a lot of headlines about millionaires in their droves leaving. I can definitely understand why they're doing that, but there's a lot to weigh up when it comes to making a decision on moving country, and also then what you can do in that new country as an investor and as an entrepreneur. So that's the topic. It's kind of broad. Obviously, I'm trying not to say Dubai, but I think we should say Dubai. Lots and lots of property opportunities there. Everyone that I seem to see on social media is going out to Dubai to sell property because the property market is hot. Is it a bubble that's going to burst? You know, is this something we should be getting involved in? And I think this is a great topic for us to discuss, because I'm personally interested in it, and we do have friends that have gone out there that we want to see super successful in whatever they put their time and efforts into. Leaving,
So it's like a live family discussion.
We might divorce live on this cast. Why, number one, do you think most people are leaving the UK, particularly in the last year or so?
Where do I start? Well, I think it depends on the person you're obviously speaking to. I think that, we talk to a lot of other kind of business owners and people in property. It just feels like at the moment, or recently, this country is just a slog. Everything seems like a slog. It's so difficult to get anything done. And it feels like there's just time you get a bit ahead. The government will look at it and go, oh yeah, well, let's change that rule because can't have you lot making money. So we'll increase taxes over there. It feels like whichever way you turn, you're just getting taxed. I mean, I've been reading a lot of stuff about, people who are trying to avoid getting promotions to get 100K salary because there's a tax trap between like 100 and 125K where you're worse off getting a pay rise, which is just crazy. And I think the perception with a lot of the country might be that 100,000, if you're rich if you earn 100,000. It's like, well, maybe 20 years ago, but not now.
Yeah.
And it's it just feels it's relentless against anyone that's aspirational. And therefore, I think a lot of people cast a little eye over to somewhere like Dubai, where there is a lot of aspiration and it's encouraged, and there's no tax at the moment. That might change. But I can absolutely see why it's attractive when you lump that in with it's winter and it's dark and the weather's rubbish, and we can all feel a bit kind of overwhelmingly endlessly bleak.
And it is January, right? So everyone is probably thinking, God, how is 2026 going to be different from last year? And look, we've really toyed with this because actually there's people that we know that want to stay in the UK, but they've actually restructured parts of their business and opened up a Dubai company to make an element of their business tax-free. So for example, if you have an online element, an e-commerce element to your business, then having that based out of a tax-free jurisdiction can be really attractive.
This is not tax advice.
Oh, yeah, no, this is
Just
definitely
gonna
not
say.
tax advice. Absolutely not tax
Go and
advice.
speak to a tax professional.
Yeah.
We are not that. But
Oh,
but yeah, look, I think, you know, the world is very much changing in that if you have a digital business, you can essentially base that anywhere. If you've got property business, bit different. You can't just lift up the property and move it to Dubai. So yeah, you know, I can totally see why people are looking into it. Our situation is probably a little bit different in that, you know, we've got UK assets, so we're going to be taxed on UK assets
yes.
no matter where we actually live. However, that wouldn't necessarily stop us. Well, a couple of options: liquidate all UK assets and
Yep.
then reinvest into another jurisdiction.
Yep.
Um, up other online businesses which can be based somewhere else
Yep.
and be based elsewhere for tax purposes. You know, the world is more free now to move. I mean, I get not everyone can, but and I think it's kind of, I don't know. I think the government are not really appreciating that element. When you see stats like 12,000 millionaires left last year. I
Hmm.
think it was something along those lines. Where they're going? Well, they're going to Dubai, they're going to Italy, going to other parts of Europe.
Portugal.
Yeah. You know, so why they're going there? Because they can,
Yeah,
and they
that's
can
it.
relocate, and they
Yeah.
can set up, you know, if you're an entrepreneur, you can go and set up a business somewhere else. You know, and then you see government talk about, well, net immigration's actually, you know, we're not losing people. Yeah, but who are you replacing the 12,000 millionaire? Who are you replacing them with? I
People
don't
who,
think you're replacing them with other millionaires.
yeah.
I think you're replacing them with economic migrants. You know, so you look at, you know, the tax base that's leaving, and then you've got people coming in who are not going to replace that level of tax. Well, how is that going to play out?
Yeah. I think bigger picture wise, we're very aware that the UK is not the country it used to be. Economically speaking, you know, the pound was, well, no, you know, the pound is still deemed to be a currency of real value that people want in their portfolio. But in terms of military and defense and ownership, that seems to have definitely taken a bit of a nosedive. And I'm worried that we're a bit of a laughing stock globally because of the
I think
mess that we're all in. And it's going to take decades to sort it out. And I think decades to sort it out, regardless of what
it,
they start to do now, because we're a huge, big Titanic that's going to take a while to change direction.
yeah, I mean, you've got, yeah, absolutely. You know, it's even if policies change today, it's still going to take years
Yeah,
to reverse I think it is damage. The
it is
damage that's been
damage.
done the economy. You know, as in property investors and landlords, we've been just relentlessly hammered now for
Yeah,
10 years.
yeah, yeah. So
Um,
the million dollar question is, why are we still doing it then? I mean, we're sounding quite moany here, which, you know, I know that some of our listeners will echo how we are feeling. And, you know, we have been in this game for quite a long time. We are not going to stop buying property here in the UK because fundamentally the population requires somewhere to live. And
if you're
well,
buying the right thing,
yeah,
right? So
okay.
this is really key for us. Is like we would absolutely continue buying buy to lets
Yeah.
because if you think about, you know, the population demographic changes, you've got a government that's relentlessly hammered landlords for years on end. And a lot of maybe the older generation, we did a podcast on the new millennial generation of landlords that's coming in, seeing maybe a lot of the boomer generation or Gen Xers like us generation thinking, do you know what, I'm done with this. I'm just like done with being hammered all the time. Because the model that maybe worked 20, 30 years ago doesn't work now. But that doesn't mean you can't still do it because you just have to be professional about it. And if you're buying the right thing in the right place and the right structure, I think you're actually going to win long term as a property investor because if all the landlords are leaving and selling up, simple supply and demand,
Yeah.
you know,
Big opportunities.
big opportunities. And I think this, you know, you'll look back in a few years' time when rents are skyrocketing, thinking, kind of wish I bought
Yeah.
5 years ago.
Mm.
Because this, I think, is a moment
Yeah.
because we're at that. I think we're at this level where the rents, in my opinion, can only go one way.
Yes, absolutely. And I think the UK is moving away from that desire to be an owner occupier and we're moving as a country to be more inclined to want to rent because they want that flexibility to go traveling and go overseas and come and go and be more flexible with their lives. Maybe the whole 30-year career thing is just not attractive to the next generation. As landlords that can offer a flexible rent option,
Yeah,
there's real opportunity there.
absolutely. And in social housing, I think it's
Yeah.
huge opportunities in social housing.
Well, it's always the second exit now, second, third, fourth exit that you can have in every deal is we know that the demand is there, that the government will want our stock because they have an increased amount of people needing somewhere to live. And if you've got the supply, then they're willing to pay for it.
And how many houses has the Sir Keir Starmer government built since they promised, what, 1.5 million houses?
No, I think that was the headline, not like 2 million, 2 million, 2
Yeah,
million.
I think it's 1.5.
It was.
I'd love to know how many they've built since they came into power, but it's not going to be that many, I don't think.
Look, I think that politically we're in for some more chaos and it's just going to keep going. But where there's chaos, there's opportunity. And while the massive, while a lot of people are looking to leave the country, those that can stomach it and grind it out will still, I think, do very well out of this chaotic scenario that we're in right now.
I guess the big
Yeah.
question is, do you want to grind it out for the next few years and hope things change, or go somewhere where it's entrepreneurship is actively encouraged?
Well, that is a great question. And this is where I've gone very black and white on it because that's how my brain works. And that is, what is the cost of me going to move somewhere else? Or what am I going to save by going and living somewhere else? So if my earnings and income remain the same, regardless of where it comes from, let's say either we liquidate all assets here in the UK and we deploy that somewhere else, or whatever, just keep the same income coming in. What am I saving on an annual basis by being somewhere else? And let's just say, for argument's sake, it's 150,000. Okay, which is not a small amount of money, but the cost is really, is it worth £150,000 a year to uproot your entire family, go overseas, try and establish yourself in a new jurisdiction, potentially start again somewhere else that there'll be a steep learning curve on? What is the price? What is it worth to stay where you're at? What's it worth to go elsewhere? And that really is a personal question that only you can answer for yourselves and your own family situation and where you're at.
Yeah, I mean, that's looking at it very practically on a monetary basis. So there's
Yes.
also obviously the softer side of it of living in a different country where you may not have the support group, all those kind of aspects of it as well, the softer side of it. So there is a lot to think about. And I think we're at the point where we're kind of seriously thinking about it. And it wouldn't take too much more, I think, to push us over the edge.
Yeah, but this is where we're different, right? Because while I'm very practical and the cost of moving or the cost of what I'm going to save from going overseas is one thing, our boys are at a stage where the upheaval to them and their education and what that means long term, because you're talking about, exam time, you're talking about educationally, if they want to be going to university here in the UK and we're living overseas, they're now an international student, which has implications in itself. So there is such a huge, wide ripple effect where, I've been black and white on the cost of it. You're very much, you'd be overseas tomorrow if you could, because you just can't stand the Scottish climate, which I get. And you're not Scottish. So like, what are your roots here? Really? You're an imposter, that we've kind of tolerated into our country.
Have you tolerated though?
Well, that's debatable as well.
So yeah,
I feel that Edinburgh is my home. My family are here and the support. And I feel like I've worked very hard to establish, our roots here. I live where I want to live. Our kids go to the school we want them to go to. We've kind of got deep roots. So to uproot that for me will be a lot harder than say it would be for you.
Yeah, but there's also a compromise there in that, can we stick it out until, the situation is different?
Yes.
That's maybe a different conversation where, if we look at it as a more of a short to medium term or medium term window.
Yes.
whilst setting ourselves up to be more mobile later,
Yes.
then that's something that might resonate with anyone listening here, is to think about, well, let's look at our life plan over the next 5, 10, 20 years, being well, and starting to put things in place now for that potential move maybe in 10 years' time.
Just so happens that the boys have around 9 years of education left
Wow.
at
Yeah.
school.
Then-
So yeah, I think I started to feel very, very uncomfortable about conversations of, going overseas. And while I'm really excited for our friends that are doing it and think it's fantastic that they are, uprooting, selling up the house, uprooting the kids' school and moving elsewhere, I think that's brilliant. Good on them, brave. It's not something I want to do. I feel actually what Rachel Reeves and the Labour government have done is the perfect constructive dismissal case. They are backing us into leaving something we don't really want to leave because we have no alternative. That is constructive dismissal. I'm going to get a lawyer against the Labour government about constructive dismissal for our country. I won't be alone in that.
It does kind of feel that way a little bit. So, I don't know how things are going to pan out. Nobody does. But if you listen to things that, someone like Elon Musk is saying, none of it's going to matter anyway.
Oh, I know. Well, that's a whole nother episode on artificial intelligence taking us all out.
Kids, no, it wasn't like that. It's like kids' education doesn't matter. No one's going to need to work. You're going to have armies of robots doing everything, and we won't need to work. Who knows what's going to happen? So, there are a lot of things to think about. But yeah, I mean, ultimately, I think unless something else drastically changes, I think, we're staying put for the time being. I'm just going to put that in there for the time being, because you don't know. Because, it's, as I said, for me anyway, personally, it wouldn't take an awful lot more hammering of aspiration for us to think, you know what, that's just a step too far.
Yeah. And look, it's not that we don't want to pay tax and we don't want to contribute. We absolutely are comfortable with doing that. But where at every turn you try and better yourself, you try and, contribute to the economy in that you're employing people, you're housing people. And this mentality of, well, if you've got something, we're taking it from you. And oh, by the way, we're going to give it to all the people that have nothing. It's like at some point, people are going to be like, enough's enough, we're off, which is exactly what's happening. And that's why you have the likes of a lovely Farage shouting very loudly about how that's unfair. And people are going to buy into that. Like, I mean, we don't even need a crystal ball to predict where this is headed, right? It's writing on the wall going to happen. Yeah. Scotland, different matter altogether.
Different. I mean, I hesitate to get political, but, you can see that there is a groundswell of opinion, against the current government. They're fundamentally, I think, misunderstanding what a lot of the country want. And I think that's going to end badly, But for us, the constant attacks on aspiration and entrepreneurship and, it is really challenging. I find that really, really challenging because, we want to contribute, of course, but we are producers. We do create employment. We do provide homes for people to live in that otherwise would have something worse to live in. Yep. And I know, the government like to hammer, or a lot of the country, you don't really understand it, like to hammer landlords, but actually landlords to do things properly are really, really needed. I think a lot of investors and landlords are completely and utterly fed up, with a very polite way of putting it. That's not understood. And that's why I think while they're leaving, they think, I just don't need this anymore. I'll just cash out. I don't need it. Cash out on those properties that would have gone to maybe vulnerable people that needed social housing or rental houses. It's gone. They've gone out. They've gone out of the rental pool. So there's a lot going on. A lot to think about. To get it from landlord's perspective, it feels hard at the moment to be doing property. And when you say you're in property, a lot of people go, "Oh, isn't it really tough at the moment?" Well, isn't it? Isn't. Depends what you're doing.
It's always been tough though, but in different ways. It's either when in a boom time, finding quality deals is tricky, and in a recession, then getting your hands on the money is tricky. Yeah. There's always a challenge, and right now, the challenge that we're facing is not the deals and not the money; it's just the political outlook. So I guess it's just like different challenge on a different day.
But everything kind of goes in circles. I'm a firm believer in things, move in circles, and that that at some point, I think it's coming, the narrative about landlords and investors will change because there'll suddenly be, we have a problem. We don't have enough private rental sector houses, right? And I think they should know that already. but I don't think it'll be too long before that becomes the narrative. And they'll have to backtrack on a lot of these things, but a lot of people will be gone.
Too
And
late.
so for new investors coming in, I really do think opportunity, as long as you're set up correctly, you know what you're buying, there is long-term opportunity still in the UK property market.
Yeah, I mean, property's always been a medium to long-term investment vehicle anyway. So, and we know that in a couple of years' time, Labour's not going to be here. So, it'll all be different then anyway.
Maybe,
Who
maybe
knows?
not. But, who knows
Maybe
what's
not.
happening in the next 2, 3 years. I think a lot of things are going to change drastically in the next 2 or 3 years. Let's hold another episode on the AI
Yep.
revolution, I think, that is coming. And if you're not aware of it, I strongly urge you to become aware of it.
Yeah.
So we can look at that on our later episode and discuss how that now is affecting kind of our longer term decision making as well.
Yep. Yeah, investing in robotics and other vehicles that you can be considering.
Well, think about in a a world where there's a lot of unemployment due to AI in the short, medium term. What is going to be needed in the UK property market is people still need somewhere to live fundamentally. So
Yeah.
I think there's going to be a huge growth in the social housing sector from even where it is now. And particularly if things like universal basic income come in,
Wow.
that is for the investor who's ahead of the game. That things like that are going to be a real win.
Yeah. Yeah. So we're staying put. That's that.
For now,
Discussed live on air, family
now.
decision. We're staying in the UK. But look, we did consider it. Absolutely. Seriously considered it. Seriously looked at it. But I'm a lot more comfortable that, look, let's stay put while the boys are at school. And then we can base ourselves wherever after that. And they can look after themselves.
But things may change.
Oh, really?
Watch this space. Well, I don't know.
Oh,
It depends what the government
crikey.
do, doesn't it? Yeah, honestly, if the government make it even a bit harder than what it is now, we would have to we'd have to look at it
Again.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, I think so. Well,
Ugh.
it depends. So, what else are we up to at the moment? So, a quick update on what we're up to.
Oh, yes. So we've
What
got
are we
the
up to?
hotels are all good, up, running, performing, good. Still, what are our challenges? Well, always banks, surveyors, valuations, lending. That's just always the challenge that we face. We're still buying buy-to-lets, little baby grunters, as we call them,
Yeah.
the little ugly
Yeah.
buy-to-lets. We're still
They're great.
adding them into the portfolio. We're going back now and having to refurb some of our very original stock that we bought years ago because it's a bit tired and dated, but the rents are going up on those. So yeah,
We've been looking at businesses to buy. So, we've been
businesses
evaluating
to buy.
some non-property related business opportunities. So, that's something that's still ongoing.
We've got a couple bubbling away in the background that we're interested in. Although I would say, if we were being really brutally honest, are we that committed? And because we think, well, the amount of effort that it will take to get it to a place that would be performing at the level we'd want it to perform. But that's obviously, us looking at purchasing these businesses using options and interesting strategies that we've already used in property, but moving them into other industries. It's good to be pushing our boundaries and looking at industries and businesses that we've got no experience of. But I would say that we're probably holding back a little bit because we're like, do we really want to go into that industry? What do we know about it? Absolutely nothing.
Yeah. Does it fit with our overall life plan, bearing in mind that has been kind of a little bit up in the air for the last few months,
Well, that's
I would
it.
say.
That's it.
So, we've got to fit all that into the overall 10,
Plan.
15, 20-year plan.
That's it.
That's right. They were still, so this year was all about consolidation, get the hotels optimized, working really, really well, and probably doing few little cheeky buy-to-lets as we go. I think that's the plan.
Few little cheekies. I mean, we can't sit still, can we? So we'll just keep that vibe going on. But staying well and truly in sunny Scotland.
For now.
Yeah, for now.
All right, so how can people get hold of us? So you can follow Caroline on Instagram at
CarolineClayton.property. Yes, that's on Instagram.
You can comment on if you're watching this on YouTube, do leave us some comments. You can communicate with us that way. You can find us at propertywealthsystem.co.uk and the Property Wealth Club. Link is in the show notes if you're reading them below. And yeah, send us some ideas for any topics you want to discuss. Tell us what you think about your plans to either stay or leave the UK. What are you doing?
Yeah.
It'd be very interesting to hear other people's take on this thorny subject.
Yeah, it's touchy, right? Touchy. But yeah, keep in touch. Tell us what you'd like us to talk about. and look forward to speaking to you again soon in the future, next week.
Okay.